Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Fall 2024 eCoach Day. Our theme is Digital Enchantment, the Magic of Interactive Learning. We are very excited that you were able to be with us today. We have a jam-packed schedule of lots of exciting things, and we are thrilled that you were able to join us today. For those of you that are new or don't know me, I am Carrie Lambert. I am one of the academic specialists here with the Office of Instructional Technology. We do want to kick our day off here with just some introductions for the Office of Instructional, we're no longer the Office of Instructional Technology. We are just the Instructional Technology Office. Sorry, old habits die hard. But we wanted to start off with some introductions. It's been quite a while since we have had everyone together. We had the town hall in September, but that was optional. So this is the first time that we've had such a large group together, and there have been quite a few changes here on our end. We want to make sure everyone knows who everyone is. So I'm very happy to introduce you all to Tara McNulty. She is our new Senior Manager of Instructional Technology. She comes to us from Baltimore County. She's been with us for about 2 months now. We haven't run her away yet, so I think that's a good thing. She's still here and still smiling. Tara, you want to unmute and say hi so they can all see your face over there?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and the opportunity to share some great new information with you all.
All right. Thank you, Tara. We have our 3 academic specialists, myself, excuse me, Tracy Brown. Tracy, you want to unmute wherever you are? I can't see you on my screen. So.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
And then we have Morgan Thompson.
Morning, everyone.
And then last but certainly not least, we have Darren Towers, who is our LMS specialist and keeps that whole system humming for us.
Good morning.
He's going to be keeping it short and sweet this morning. All right, so that is our team. We are small but mighty, and we are always here for you. So please don't ever forget that you can reach out to us at any point. We are happy to help in any way that we can or direct you to where you can find the answers. We are always here, whether it's to upload questions via email, come out to the schools. We are always here for you. So we're glad that you could be here with us today as we celebrate our 20 years of eCoach champions here in the district. Started in 2004. For all of you who have been in education for a while, you know that 20 years of any kind of program in education is definitely a milestone worth celebrating. And so we wanted to spend a few moments this morning recognizing all that we have accomplished together. I love seeing all of the backgrounds back there. I appreciate showing everyone kind of off how many years that they have here in the eCoach program. We thought we would have a little bit of fun with this, and we're going to do a quick time to climb to go over some of the history of the eCoach program, as well as to see how many applications some of you might remember over the years that we have had. There are 11 questions. I think we have to go with the Halloween theme. Yes, that's where we need to go right now. This is 11 questions. You will have 15 seconds to answer each question. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue here. Let everybody get your avatars going. All right, got all hopping in there. I love all the little costumes. Lots of penguins. All right. All right, give everyone, we just got 83. All right, 104, we're getting there. I am going to stop sharing my screen, or actually I'm going to freeze and pull this over because you'll see the answers otherwise as we go through this. So we can't have that. All right, everyone's slowly hopping on. All right. Great. Okay, 120, I think that's good enough to get started. Everyone else, as you jump in, we can catch up. All right, first question. Here we go. What year did high schools get eCoaches? Oh, I think it's going to surprise you all. All right. The correct answer, everybody, is in 2014, believe it or not, was the first year that we had eCoaches in the high schools. So name that technology. You can click on the picture and make it larger on your screen, so you don't have to squint. All right. For those of you, that is actually Pixie with a P, not Wixie. It was the software version of Wixie that we used to have. Number 3, applications were once required to be an eCoach. The answer to that was true. There's enough of us around, I think, that remember those. But yes, used to have to apply. And this one, we're not looking at the Chromebook, but what is on the screen of the Chromebook? You can zoom in on that one. What was that? What did we used to call that page? A lot of you still remember this one. It is indeed the splash page, a precursor to class link. All right. Which of your team members presented for eCoach Day before we were members of instructional technology? All right, so you guys are actually doing pretty well on this one. Tracy, myself, and Darren all presented. Darren, Morgan, and I are all former eCoaches, but Tracy presented in her former capacity as with ABI. All right, can you figure out which technology this one is? Ooh. This one surprises me. I thought more of you would get it. That is the old signing page for Nearpod, believe it or not. Still an application we use quite a bit, obviously. All right. How many hours did you all submit last year? Right, the correct answer was just about 2,500 hours that you all submitted last year. It just goes to show you how busy you all are. This one is a deep dive. Okay, that was actually Inspiration. That was an old software program. We also had Kidspiration, but this was the one for the intermediate students. When did we first start meeting virtually? All right, it was actually fall of 2022. We took a break from eCoach Day during the entire pandemic, and we didn't get started again until fall of 2022. Next to last question. Oh, you're all doing well on this one. Very good. That is actually a smart notebook, which, believe it or not, we do still have on all of our computers. People forget about it, but it is still there. All right. Last but certainly not least, how many eCoaches have been with us for over 10 years? The correct number, ladies and gentlemen, is we have 13 eCoaches that have been with us for over 10 years. So thank you for playing along with us there. Zara is our winner. You can give her a virtual round of applause there. Hopefully you enjoyed that. We had quite a bit of fun kind of digging deep through our photo archives to find some of those pictures and finding some of those trivia questions to task you all with. Hopefully you learned a little bit of something about the eCoach program through that. We have seen a lot of change over the years, but we definitely want to just piggyback here for a moment and really recognize those eCoaches that have been with us for 10 or more years. And we appreciate you all sticking by us. So with 10 to 14 years, we have Leslie Everett down over at Brooklyn Park Middle School, Jessica Krasnick, now with Virtual Academy, Siobhan Hawkins with Windsor Farm, also our MSET Educator Award winner last year. Katie Dutton over at Central. Kate Miller at Maryland City. Deanna Jackson-Stallnaker currently at Severn Run, but has actually held the position across 3 different schools that we could remember. So thank you for sticking with us. With 15 to 19 years with the program, we have Katie Ventrudo over at Shipley's Choice, Kim Beasley over at Bodkin Elementary, Lori Runk at George Cromwell, who actually started with the program in 2004, took a couple of year break there, and then rejoined us in 2010. Trish Matheny down at Southern, and Mike Schemmel at Solly Elementary with 19 years. And then our 2 that have been with us since the very beginning, Kim Wilcox and Regina Riley. Thank you, all 13 of you, for being with us and hanging with us for so long. We've seen a lot of change in those years. Keep an look out in your inner office. We sent a little something to you just as a personal thank you from those of us here in instructional technology to show our appreciation for being with us for as long as you have. Your dedication is greatly appreciated and admired. And we want to thank all of you who are on the call today for being with us, whether it is your first year of being an eCoach or your 20th year of being an eCoach. We are so appreciative of all that you do for your staff and your students, and really to promoting the effective use of instructional technology in our classrooms and recognizing the benefit that it plays to our students. And as we think about that, you're all going to kind of chuckle. You've probably seen this in my email signature. But when we thought about the eCoach program and where we are going, it certainly brought to mind a magic maker in my mind, Walt Disney, who was always also very on the cutting edge of technology. And this quote really speaks to me, as well as to, I think, the path of the eCoach program, eCoach Champion program, that we keep moving forward, and that we're opening up those new doors and doing new things because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. And we're really excited for the future of this program and where it's headed, and we're grateful to have all of you along for the ride for that one. A few housekeeping items before I turn it over to our keynote speaker. Just want to remind everyone that all sessions will be recorded, and the resources will be made available to all of you. We will be linking them on that session catalog where you're finding your Google Meet links. We'll be replacing those with the recordings and the resources after today. If you need closed captioning, that is available, of course, down in Google Meet. Make sure you turn that on. It's that double C that is beside the reactions. Google Forms will be dropped into every session at the end of each session for attendance purposes and evaluation purposes. So please make sure that you are seeing that. There will also be a final evaluation at the very end of the day. I know I have heard from a handful of you who have to leave a couple of minutes early. If that is you, please let me know so that I can make sure you get that final evaluation form to complete. We do have an optional note catcher. It is on that session catalog. If you submit your notes to us, it doesn't have to be the note catcher. It can be whatever form you would prefer. If you like handwritten, by all means, snap a picture There will be a spot for that in that final evaluation. If you submit your notes to us, we have four class sets of headphones with microphones that we will send out to you as a random. We'll pick from the people that submit their notes, and we'll get that sent out to you. We already have them packed up and ready to go. So feel free to share for a chance to win one of those class sets. And of course, the most important part is lunch, 12:10 to 1:10. Excuse me. We're going to give you guys an hour today. We know you don't get that very often. So just another short of gesture of our appreciation for all you do is you can actually have a full hour and you don't have to inhale your lunch between running to the copier and running to the bathroom and grabbing students. So we hope you enjoy that, but please make sure that you are back promptly at 1:10 for that 3 o'clock session. So with that, I am going to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Shannon Pugh. She is our Director of Strategic Initiatives. Dr. Pugh and Instructional Technology, we go back a ways. We spent a lot of time together on Google Meet calls during e-learning, getting up our e-learning page for everyone. So we're really grateful that she was not sick of us and willing to join us this morning to talk to us about our new AACPS strategic plan and how that works with Maryland Blueprint, as well as ESSA. This is our guiding force, our guiding document for the next 5 years, and will certainly be shaping what we do here in instructional technology. So we wanted to make sure that you all had a good understanding of that plan. After Dr. Pugh speaks, we will be doing a workshop activity. Tracy is going to take the lead on that and really diving into how instructional technology can support all aspects of our strategic plan, but especially that core belief that we have of innovation that clearly states that all students should have a tech-infused, joyful classroom. So without further ado, Dr. Pugh, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. One of the few things that was lovely about those months in 2020 was spending time with you. And I learned so much from Carrie and Tracy and others about technology during that time. I always thought I was pretty tech savvy, but I certainly learned from experts there. So appreciate that. I do want to let you know that I'm officially off this morning. I have a puppy that probably needs surgery. And so if you hear her barking in the background, just please know that I am at home this morning. And when I'm done with this opportunity, I'm going to take her for a surgery consult. So don't want anyone to freak out if you hear a dog in the background, but we will see. So thank you very much. I am going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint to go through. I do encourage any notes, questions, reactions, please, in the chat box. I do know that my friends are going to be monitoring that. So if there is something that I need to see, they will do that. One thing about me being at home is I only have my laptop. In my office, I actually have 3 screens. Another thing that I learned from Carrie and Tracy and all of that, I have quite the setup in my office. But the point is I really can't see all the different things going on at once with one screen. So they're going to help me out with that. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But I do have a presentation that I'm not going to be offended at all if there is time during that for if anybody has a question. So let me do this. All right. So you're going to make sure that I am on the right page. So can everybody share? Everyone see that? If someone will orally tell me we're good, I can get started.
You are good to go.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So as Carrie mentioned, I'm Shannon Pugh. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives. I want to spend just a minute talking about that because I think it really shapes and helps people understand where Dr. Bedell comes from and his very strategic approaches to a lot of things related to education. And so one of the things that he asked me previously, so last year I had a different title. I was the Director of Community and School-Based Programs and the Blueprint Implementation Coordinator. So across the state, every LEA by law has to have a Blueprint Implementation Coordinator who is identified by both the school system and the county government. So I actually got to interview with both for that position. But one thing Dr. Bedell, when he came in, and he realized that we need to update our strategic plan because it did sunset during COVID, and nobody was in really the position to engage in that work at the time. Was he really struggled with why everything on your screen was in different offices, And so his approach is, since all these things require monitoring of metrics, facilitating of a lot of state and federal reports, I proudly say I'm probably the chief bureaucrat for the system, whether that's on the local, state, or federal level. I tell people a lot that things are against the law, things like that as we go along. But his question was, why is this divided among so many different offices? And I don't mean the day-to-day work of necessarily everything you see on the screen, but is there someone who's facilitating, who has their fingers in all of this, so we don't have competing priorities? I know that many times in AACPS, we've talked about silos. We've talked about, if you're at the school level, which I know almost all of you are, the question of, don't those people at the board actually talk to each other? That they have us do this and they have us do that, et cetera. But this is Dr. Bedell's very strategic approach of saying, one person is going to at least have their finger in all of these to make sure all these different programs are talking to each other. So within my division, and just so you know, I am a division of one. It's not like I have a huge division, but just the way that we now identify on the organization chart. So I am the Division of Strategic Initiatives. So within that, the strategic plan facilitation. So I worked this past year with teams to create that, and I will talk about that so you're aware of that background. I remain the blueprint implementation coordinator, as I alluded to. I also supervise the creation of state consolidated grants. It's just a lot of different state grants, but once again, Dr. Bedell did not want everyone going after these little or big grants and everyone else not knowing about them. So why aren't we sitting down, being very strategic, going, this is what we want to accomplish? What are the different buckets that we can use in order to accomplish the goals that we have? And then ESSA alignment. So in my previous position, I did supervise the Office of Title I. But now I'm supervising the creation of these plans within all those titled federal grants, but not the actual day-to-day implementation. So it's really about making sure that we're looking at the same metrics. We don't have one thing that measures something one way and something else that measures another. I think this is worth just going over so you can understand that view and understand very specific approaches that Dr. Bedell has. So I want to shift over to strategic plan and a little bit of the background in the Google in the Google Drive that was shared with me. I do have a link to this actual PDF document if you would like to see that. Otherwise, the QR code there takes you to our website. We do very much refer to this as a living document. And that is very intentional because you'll see in a couple places we've already made a few changes based upon as we've started to engage in this work. But last year, the strategic plan, that was a 6-month process. We brought in a consultant. Dr. Bedell also did not want anyone in the community to think that he created the strategic plan in a back room somewhere. And then it came from the top down. What he really wanted from his experiences is something that comes from the bottom up. And so we had over 60 stakeholders, community members, teachers, administrators, some central office people, but nobody in the highest levels of leadership. And once again, that was intentional. But to bring people together, we met 6 times. And at the end of this work, working with the consultant, we were able to present our plans to Dr. Bedell and his cabinet and leadership team to ask, this is what we'd like to go forward with. And very intentional, once again, that intentionality of making sure that everything in the strategic plan aligns to state and federal requirements so that we're not creating, we're not creating competing initiatives.
Shannon, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think we're seeing your note page.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And not actually your slides. There we go.
So are you seeing what I need you to see now?
Yes, but you're not in presentation mode if you don't want to be in presentation. But
No. Okay. How about now?
No.
Okay, so it's in presentation mode on my screen. So let me see what I'm.
You are sharing the application of PowerPoint only. So it's showing us like your slide deck and not your slideshow.
Yeah.
Okay, how about I go in and show you the Google piece? Do you think that? Can anyone see this?
Right now,
No, I think you have to unshare and reshare your screen.
Yeah.
All right, I obviously need another lesson from.
We're all
from
out of practice, you know, now
I
that we've been
know,
face
I
to
know,
face
I
for a
know.
while.
All right, so let me see here about, let me go back here. Share, my apologies. Here we go.
I hate to break your flow. You were on a roll, but
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So let me do my Chrome tab, share. All right.
there we go.
How about now? And then
Now you're good.
And you know I don't use Google Slides, so how do I do the
Up
show?
at the very top, it says slideshow right next to you're already sharing. Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. All right, so that's what I've been talking about. So now let's move on to here. So this gives you the 6-month background that I just spoke about. But if you need the QR code, it's there. If you're interested in just seeing it on the website, but if you want the PDF, there's there as well. All right, so part of the process in the first couple of meetings, we spent a lot of time revising our vision and our mission related to Anne Arundel County Public Schools. You have all seen the tagline, belong, grow, and succeed, hopefully everywhere. But I'm going to give you just a second to read the mission because I don't think we spent a whole lot of time on it. I'm not going to focus too much on it, but I want to give you an opportunity to read that as part of the overview. All right, so now I'm going to go and start going through the different parts of the plan. And once again, I would love questions along the way if anybody has any. So there are several different parts to the strategic plan. We start off with the core beliefs. So this is something that was very interesting as 60 people were in a room from very different backgrounds, different generations, which I also thought was a lot of fun. We had students, but we also had people who were grandparents or great grandparents who just happened to be part of this team. And so as we spent a lot of time brainstorming what we believe as a system and a community that related to the education of our children, we came up with probably about 25 different words. And then as we started to collapse those and talk about what those are, we came up with 5 core beliefs to guide our work in Anne Arundel County, them being belonging, equity, innovation, integrity, and safety. So there are brief descriptions there. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but there are brief descriptions there, but it's also in the documents that I shared. And so in all of our agendas for Anne Arundel County, at least at the central office level now, we specifically asked, what core beliefs are we focusing on in this meeting? And so we have to choose one or more of those pieces and how, as a result of that meeting, we will support our core beliefs. So it's something else I was asked to do, very serious by Dr. Bedell. On the right, you see Portrait of a Graduate, and hopefully you're certainly going to see things in here that speak to you and the great work that we do in the work related to helping students navigate technology and build those skills and everything related to there. So the process of the Portrait of the Graduate, it did start with that big team. And then all those ideas then went to various student advisories. And full disclosure, it was middle school on up. We just don't have an elementary advisory structure, which is something that we might want to figure out a way to do. But please know the Portrait of a Graduate is not only for our secondary students. Nothing on here can be created starting with a child in 6th grade. This all has to start with our youngest learners and moving forward. But when we brought together all these different ideas and words for our secondary advisory groups, they're the ones who ended up identifying and focusing on future ready, effective collaborator, critical thinker, curious learner, and empathetic community member. And you should note there that each of those statements were then written from the first person, and that was the input of our students as well. So it says, I set, I form, I analyze. So it was really based upon those pieces. I'm going to give you a second to look through there because I personally see lots of connections for the work that this team does, but give you a second to read through those as best you can on the screen. And then if anyone has any questions, I'd love to have one, or otherwise we'll jump right into the priorities. All right, I'm going to think that everyone had an opportunity, and if I'll give you a second if you have a question. But if not, I will certainly move forward. And I do know that there is an activity after this to align any of your work with it. So if you don't have any questions now, hopefully some of your future work this afternoon or after the session will unpack this a little bit more. So I'm assuming there aren't any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So here are some of the basic pieces. And incidentally, in our we have policies and regulations for almost everything. And in our policies and regulations, we're required in the strategic plan to have a revised mission, vision, and belief section. Portrait of a Graduate is something that has started really nationwide. We have states have portraits of graduates, districts do as well. Now universities have them. So we are not unique in this work of Portrait of a Graduate. We are on this nationwide trend of what do we really want our children once they leave us to be able to do. That isn't, I did well in the SAT, or I passed all my classes, or any of those things. So hopefully these are a little bit more authentic in what it means to be an engaged, informed adult once they leave us. All right, so our strategic plan has 5 priorities, and each priority has a goal. And so what you see here, and in some versions, the goals are numbered 1, 2, 3. We have revised that so that they should now all start saying goal A, B, C, but you might have come across a version that just hasn't been transitioned yet. So priority 1 is achieving academic excellence. So that, of course, is the core of what we have or what we should be doing as a school system. I'm going to break down these goals a little bit more when we talk about the scorecard. But goal A is about students reading on grade level. That is the foundation of all of our work. I know many of you work at the elementary level, and if we don't have children reading on grade level, we really don't set them up for very positive futures. Goal B has to do with students demonstrating meeting or exceeding proficiency on a variety of different national and state standard measures. I want to focus again on both meeting or exceeding. That is something that Dr. Bedell has spoken a lot about. We're not just okay that everyone is, in the middle, everyone has met the minimum standard. He really is focusing a lot on what are we doing for our students who do exceed standards and making sure we're supporting them, as well as the support that we provide and have in place for students who struggle to meet those standards. And then goal C has to do with multilingual learners exiting our English language program. So that's how we're going to measure that. But how are we supporting our multilingual learners and their development of English? And so that is the crux of priority 1, achieving academic excellence. And again, I'm going to break that down a little bit more when we get to our scorecard. So our second priority is also very much academically focused, and we really debated back and forth on what should align where. So the first one is, yep, I've met some academic goals and measures, but the second one is now I'm ready for the next steps. I'm ready to transition, whether that's transitioning to grades, whether that's transitioning to a pathway, whether that's transitioning out of school. And so the first goal that we have for there has to do with kindergarten readiness. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, like I said, in just a few minutes. But there's a lot of emphasis, not only statewide, but nationwide, of academic readiness of our children for kindergarten. And I know some of us, if we have elementary backgrounds, are like, I necessarily wasn't ready for kindergarten when I entered kindergarten. And we're not necessarily talking about, I know my letters or my numbers, but I give a really good example of one of the things that we actually had to do in academics related to technology was that so many of our kindergarten students, as we were looking at their readiness for kindergarten, couldn't grasp things because they've been doing, the past back generation. They can, move their fingers to things, et cetera, but they couldn't use scissors. They couldn't actually grasp balls because they're just not using their hands as much as they traditionally would have 10 or more years ago. And so actually our physical education curriculum for kindergarten actually changed for a lot of games and opportunities for kids to grab balls, to do different things with their hands that would set them up for the physical requirements to be able to navigate some of those basic physical skills that they would need in kindergarten. I know that sounds a little bit different than what you might have been thinking, but that is probably one of our biggest successes of looking at kindergarten readiness and identifying that those physical components, being able to cut or draw or even pick up a pencil, was something that we had to be very deliberate in our curriculum on. Goal B, we're actually playing with, have we worded it the best way possible? But what the team really wanted was a well-rounded education where kids can go into different pathways, whether they be, college pathways, AP, IB, dual enrollment, whether they be more focused directly on the workforce, so CTE. But also as we start working on the scorecard of how we're going to measure all this, other things have come up of what about military preparedness? What about some of the other pathways that kids could be on? So we might tweak this one a little bit, but I'll talk about that maybe in just a little bit more. And then finally for that is the percent of students who graduate within 4 years. So those are, here we have 6, what I call pretty academic goals. I'm going to take a breath for a second. If anyone has any specific questions on either these 2 priorities or the 3 goals underneath, feel free to put it in the chat box or to ask me. And I'm going to take a drink of my coffee.
The chat is quiet, Shannon.
All right. That's all right.
I stand corrected. How does ELL coming into the country affect the 4-year? I don't know if you can help me.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So ELLs, my understanding, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but the only difference as far as 4-year graduation rates, well, let me go back. The state doesn't care. The state is measuring, state and federal government measures 4-year cohorts and 5-year cohorts, but we only get points for 4-year cohorts. We are measured on 5-year cohorts. And then we have students who, because they have IEPs, et cetera, are guaranteed a free public and appropriate education until the age of 21, but we don't measure them. You can actually graduate from high school at the age of 18, 19, have an IEP and stay with us, depending on your specific needs until you're 21. And so what you just asked about that, all of these will be done by student group. And so there's going to be a lot of data behind the data. So we'll probably flesh out different student groups. But I need to check to see if entrance, year of entrance for our English language learners that we now incidentally officially call multilingual learners, just so you know, the new terminology from the feds and the state government. But that's a really good question. And I need to see if we're going to parcel that out in any of our data. All right. Anything else? Okay. So now I want to go to something that actually I was very excited about. As we planned for the new strategic plan, and as we looked at all types of examples from around the country, one of the things that you don't see in a lot of school strategic plans around the country has to do with any of the adults. And so the fact that the team really wanted to highlight and focus on our staff and how are we measuring investing in our staff as part of the strategic plan. So what are we doing for our adults in our system? And so from this priority, we have 3 goals. The first one is to increase the retention, the retention of both instructional and non-instructional staff. So once you are here, how can we keep you here? And then the next one has to increase the number of diverse employees to better reflect the diversity of students. And I'll talk about that scorecard measures there. We've actually made a lot of progress in this with new hires. So we'll talk about how we're going to report on that. And then Blueprint and the career ladder really focuses on national board certification. So we wanted to include that component in here as well. So here's 3 pieces, 3 goals related to priority 3, which the focus is on staff. And then we have priority 4, which is really a big focus. It's amply named because Blueprint pillar 4 is really about supporting students with diverse needs. And so here we have supporting the whole child. as priority 4. And these things, goal A is really tricky. It's a great goal, but we've really are going to struggle with figuring out how to measure it. But it's increasing student and family awareness of access to and use of available social, emotional, behavioral, and mental health supports. And going back to the notes of the steering committee, this was really about not only school supports, but community supports, state supports, etc. It was a great noble goal, but as someone who spent the last few weeks trying to figure out how on earth we're going to be able to track that, it's going to be challenging. But goal B is something that I think all of us can relate to, is to increase the percent of students not chronically absent for all student groups. And just so you know, that weird wording comes from the federal and state government of not chronically absent, because they want the number to be high. They don't want to say decrease the number of students who are chronically absent. The new state superintendent, though, does use decrease a lot, so that terminology might change a little bit, but left over even from back to Nancy Grasmick, since then, it has always been increase the percent of students who are not chronically absent, because we want that number to be 85, 89, 95, etc. And then finally, there is to increase behavioral health supports in schools, really that student service staff to student ratio. It is worded slightly incorrectly there, so we are fixing that as well. But the national recommendation is 250 students to every single student service staff member, so counselors, psychologists, and social workers. That number is not met, to my knowledge, in anywhere in the country in a public school system, but it certainly is a great goal to have, is to increase the number of supports that our students have directly in schools. So I'm going to take a breath here. If anyone has any specific questions on either of these priorities, and again, in a minute, I'm going to show you our initial thoughts of measuring them, so we will break them down a little bit more. Okay, I am going to go ahead and go to the next one. So the last priority we have is building and sustaining our future. So this is another one of we're measuring things that we have not historically measured on any public piece. As we've worked with this, we found plenty of different metrics that are out there. They just weren't necessarily what we were used to measuring. But the first one is to ensure that all of our facilities are secure and are fully equipped with modern infrastructure and maintenance practices to create clean, safe environments for students and staff. The second one has to do with, do we have appropriate learning spaces for all of our students? And I know Darren has had to help us already with some data, because we're including virtual learning spaces and digital resources as one of the metrics to see how we're doing with goal B. And then goal C has to do with the equitable distribution funding across schools and to support students most in need. And so this is kind of the behind the scenes operational things that many of us don't spend a whole lot of time with, but this also was very important in our strategic plan building. So before I go into how we're going to measure this and our next steps, does anyone have any basic questions on any of the 5 priorities or any of the goals, knowing you'll have an opportunity to ask more detailed questions if they come up in a minute? All right, moving forward. So we're going to talk about a scorecard. So what is a scorecard? I think a great example is to look at like what is on a baseball card. And in a couple weeks, I'll be sharing this with the school board. And I think this is very important because there's a lot of metrics that go behind Cal Ripken and some of the others on this screen that are not on the back of a baseball card. So specific data, specific metrics are chosen to be on every baseball card related to players, but there's also a lot of things that isn't there. And so I anticipate a lot of people wanting to say, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? Some of those we might change our mind on, but for the most part, what I'm going to share with you, we're not trying to measure every single possible metric we can, but we also there might be a lot of data behind the data, if all that makes sense. So I'm going to show you what we're thinking about so far for some of those metrics. This is also a great opportunity. If anybody has any great ideas, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we will consider them. But we are now moving forward working on scorecards related to this. So what you see here are a few mock-ups of what the scorecard will look like. So we will have data that we will show throughout time. And the rules for choosing the data is, number one, the data has to already exist or something we can have in place within the next couple of months. What we don't want to do is say, hey, we're going to measure this goal through this data source that we don't even have, that's going to take 6 to 12 months to create, that we don't have any baseline data for, et cetera. Some of those might be really great ideas of what to measure moving forward, but it might be what we call the data behind the data. So we might have it somewhere, but it's not going to be our primary metric. So let's jump into achieving academic excellence. And what you will see over here is, in a second, you'll see if it aligns to Blueprint or ESSA, et cetera. So the first goal, you'll see that we've already changed it a little bit. Originally, we had students would be reading on or above grade level by the end of second grade for all student groups. But what we realized as we started unpacking this is the state is also going to report out on that measure using MCAP data. And we didn't want to have the same metric used twice, if that makes sense. And we also have a new state reading policy that's in place that really does require districts to have everything situated and ready to go at the end of grade 2 if students need additional support during 3rd grade. And so we thought we would modify this a little bit, focus on DIBELS specifically for goal 1 as the metric. For goal 2, we're going to measure, focus on MCAP, and then goal 3, WIDA access scores. And what's important here, this version kind of overlapped, but going back to what the alignment is. And so the first one really, really aligns with Blueprint requirements. The second one really, really aligns with ESSA, although it also aligns with Blueprint, because anything that aligns with ESSA aligns with Blueprint. And then also the multilingual learner piece down here as well, ESSA, but also Blueprint because of pillar 4 in Blueprint, which is a focus on multilingual learners. And so to measure these 3 goals, you can see these are very much a standardized assessment measures, whether you think that's where we should put all of our emphasis or not. The reality is those are the metrics that are being used by outside entities, meaning the state and federal accountability. And so we do want to make sure that we have all those on our radar. And what will happen each year is this will build out. We are working on our baseline year, and then underneath we'll have the next year and the next year, et cetera. So we'll be able to monitor and report out on our 5-year goals by year. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts or ideas about this, of how we're going to how we are so far working the scorecard to measure achieving academic excellence? Okay. So let's go to future readiness and transitional preparedness. And so goal 1 is we are going to use the kindergarten readiness assessment. However, we have a little hiccup in that the kindergarten readiness assessment, we have a new vendor for that, and that assessment is not ready for this year. So we will not have data for this year. So now we need to work with Dr. Bedell. Does he want to have a goal that we don't have baseline data for yet? Do we want to use last year's KRA, which is a different assessment, and then have one gap year and then a new KRA? Or what do we want to do there? Or are we just going to have a blank for the baseline year and then next year becomes our baseline year? So the law does require that every student in Maryland take a kindergarten readiness assessment. KRA is a generic term. I know I heard many people told me, oh, the KRA is going away. I'm like, well, the vendor of the last KRA is going away, but kindergarten readiness assessment is a title of a type of assessment. It is not necessarily the title of a very specific one, but we will be giving a kindergarten readiness assessment. They are probably going to make us give it in the spring, which makes absolutely no sense because we've already taught children for 3-4 months by then, but we'll see what happens. But the law does say that we have to give it each year. The law actually says we have to give it by, I believe, October 15th each year, but there is an exception for this year as we deal with a new vendor. Goal 2, increase the percentage of students who access and demonstrate, and you have a whole list there. We've actually been going back and forth on this because there's so many different ways to measure. Do we want to say that if a student took one AP course and pass the AP course, is that success? Under Blueprint, they want 5 courses. Under SM measure, they want 2. I mean, so there's all these other pieces as we've unpacked them. I'm actually going to suggest that we might modify this goal to be a little bit more generic, and then everything you see there will be underneath it. So for example, increase the percentage of students who have access to a well-rounded education that leads to a pathway in college careers or other post-secondary success or something like that. As I mentioned before, when I first put it up, Dr. Bedell was interested in military pathways and some other things there. So for right now, it's going to stay worded that way. But as we piece out what all those pieces are, we might massage that goal moving forward to really match all the great data that we really do have. We have a lot of data of kids taking advantage of pathways, but then we're trying to see how the state and feds are going to massage out some of their differences. And then the 4-year graduation cohort rate is an ESSA accountability measure. And so we're not really going to change that. So you can see there aligns to Blueprint or aligns to ESSA as required. But are there any questions about measuring future readiness in transitional preparedness?
Shannon, we do have a question going back to academic excellence real quick. Got in there after. Why do we give the MCAP to students when they don't even get results back until the next school year? It says we place so much weight and drag out this test for days, but they burn out our students. So
yep. I'm not going to, so the question is why we give it is because of federal accountability. Federal law requires that we give an assessment of students' reading and math scores every year from grades 3 through 8, and then once in high school. And then it also says the same thing for science at each grade level, elementary, middle, and high, and then for social studies at middle school and high school. So if you went to the why, that's the why. With our new assessments, they are actually turning around the data quicker, but these were not necessarily meant to be used for same year. It's not a formative assessment for their current year. The intent is that this measures where they are at towards the end of a year. So it's really used for data purposes for the next year. I know that's not a great answer that it necessarily makes sense, but that really is the purpose of that. I do think what's unfortunate, at least at the high school level, is that so many of these are now falling in 10th grade and not, being spread out. Because if Shannon were in charge of the world, like English language arts in high school is 10th grade, that's what it is. The math is algebra. So I would say math is, 9th grade, ELA is 10th grade, 11th grade is science and or social studies, just to spread that out for kids. Because I know taking 3 or 4 assessments within the course of a couple of days is pretty daunting for students. And then our elementary folks who are doing the literacy and the math each year is certainly problematic. Not the answer that you wanted to hear, not the answer of changing anything, but the why is because of federal law.
And then Shannon, going back, I think to the next one, there are so many courses being offered in each school, but the pathways are in constant competition. Yeah. How will we aim focus for each school?
I think that's a great question. So right now, because of Blueprint, we actually have to have a team that is working on at least the college pathways. But the reality is we can't offer everything everywhere, which is a good recognition. But also, we also have to make sure that kids who want something can take it, regardless of where they are. So there's a lot of emphasis right now on what do we do at our IB high schools with AP. If you don't know, if you are a student who's not in the DP diploma program for IB at one of our IB schools, Meade, Annapolis, or Old Mill, you can still take independent IB courses. You're just not part of the IB program. So that is, in some cases, reducing the number of AP courses at some schools. So they're taking advantage of the IB courses instead. But I do know there's a lot of work with CTE of trying to figure out, do we want, and this is a question, you can answer it. Do we want a system of high school where if I want to do X, I go to one of these 3 schools. And if I want to do Y, I go to one of these other 3 schools, et cetera. Or do we really want to continue with a comprehensive high school model that is, over 100 years old, of you go to your community school, your school in your community, and what is offered there is what's offered there. And you might have a few opportunities for a magnet program, but that's kind of it. So the point is, what you said is absolutely acknowledged, but then we're trying to balance that of what does this mean. One of the possible solutions, which certainly will mean well for people on the call, is do we create a structure where second period at every high school could be a virtual class? So it doesn't matter which school you're in. You could still take this one course because second period across every high school, kids are taking a virtual course, and it doesn't matter where you are. That's one thought that's been going out there. I do know we're in the process of looking at our graduation requirements. We have the most number of required credits in the state of Maryland. And so looking at those requirements and looking at Blueprint, which now requires a lot of work-based opportunities. So does that change up the model a little bit? All right. Anyway, so not a clear answer, but to just say that, yep, what you said is true and has been recognized, and floating around a couple of ideas. Those will not be in place for next year. But if anyone has any other ideas, be more than happy to take them back to a table.
2 more questions came in, plus that would be cool on the virtual second period. So you got 1 vote on that one. So the first question, you mentioned briefly that things in Blueprint are aligned with ESSA. However, you also mentioned, for example, that they disagree on a number of courses for AP. So they sometimes differ. Which one do we follow when they don't align?
So when I say they don't align, so we have to follow both. But for both of those, what doesn't align is the metric. So we have students who take 5+ courses, so we can report on that for the Blueprint piece. But ESSA is asking how many take 1 or 2, depending on the pathway. So we'll report on that too. So part of the reason why goal 2 on the screen is so complex, and we think we might have put us in a corner by calling them what we've called them there, is because we do have so many different things. The state wants to measure IB success on who gets the IB diploma. Whereas that's actually a very small percentage of students, whereas the federal government is concerned about how many kids pass individual tests on there. I don't know which one of those is a better measure, but I think it goes to, instead of saying, the success in there, we could have underneath there percentage of students enrolled in the IB diploma program who earn the diploma program, percentage of students who pass at least 1 IB exam or 2 IB exams, whatever that might be. The state very much for AP, though, wants to create these, not kids just take 1 or 2 AP courses, but they focus on it very similar to IB. Like I focus on, I'm going to take 5 courses. The state wants it to be across various disciplines. So, math, science, social studies, the arts, etc. So that is that piece. But when there is a conflict, we're working through the conflict, but the conflict is typically the metric, not necessarily the requirement. So both require that we have college pathways in place. It's just how they are measuring right now the success. And in some cases, I think not everybody is as aware of the nuances as the law of others, and the state is learning some of those pieces. That was a very diplomatic way of saying that the state doesn't know some of the things that they should know.
The next one is, are we working on communication between ESOL and classroom support staff on the programs being used and priority of the CKLA programs so these students can access the curriculum?
That's a great question, and beyond my area of expertise. So if that's something that, Carrie, you want to send me in writing, I can send that up to our elementary literacy coordinator and our elementary math English language development coordinator for their response, because I just don't know enough about that.
All right, and then I have 2 more questions that have come in, but I know we're running out of time, but I'll say those and then we'll move on.
Okay.
But I also see many students cramming in so many AP courses that are not related to their future career goals. How will the goal change that mindset for kids and parents?
So we're probably not going to, because there is a mindset very much of the more AP courses you have, the better chances you can get into whatever college you want to get into, or for specific scholarship programs. But to your point, there does seem to be a big paradigm shift of, CTE programs are very, very, applicable to a kid's future. They don't necessarily all have to go to college. I personally think every kid should graduate with the ability to go to college if they would like. I always tell kids, you want to be a plumber, but one day you're going to want to own your own plumbing company. And so are you going to be able to go to community college to take accounting courses, things like that? So I don't think we're going to be able to change that mindset as long as higher ed operates the way it does with AP.
And then lastly, is there any mention in the strategic plan about capping class sizes in elementary school, especially in the early elementary grades?
That answer is no, and it's also a no in Blueprint. Blueprint is built on research that you have more adults in classrooms and actually larger class size. Don't have anybody go and say, oh my God, our class sizes are going up. But the research is on international models. And in international classrooms, there's typically 3 or 4 adults in each classroom that might have 30 to 40 kids, but it's a different setup, right? They're larger classrooms, there's rotations going on, et cetera. So it's not built on small class size. Okay. All right. So that does, please don't go on the record of saying that I don't support small class sizes for our other ones. The only thing in Blueprint that sets a class size limit is for pre-kindergarten, and that's 10 children to every 1 adult for a maximum of 20 kids in the pre-K class. All right, so very quickly going into investing in our staff. And so we do report to the state government the number of teachers who come and go. We do also have, so this metric's gonna be interesting because we also in our field, and you guys know this, we're at this bubble of a lot of people being able to retire. We don't want to report people retiring as negative to us because there are some people who they're ready to retire. It had nothing to do necessarily with anything else. So we're looking at the metrics that we already report to the state of our staff who are part of the instructional and non-instructional staff components. Diverse employees. I mentioned before, we are having a lot of success in our new hires being more diverse and better reflect our student population than people of my age. I think we're also seeing an increase in diverse students going into education at our state universities. If you don't know, part of Blueprint has a lot of loan forgiveness in there as well for students who go into teaching. And so I think we're seeing some of that as well. And hopefully they fall in love with the profession and want to stay long-term. And increase the percentage of teachers who are nationally board certified. This past, right now we have over 300 signed up to go through the process this coming year, and we're waiting on 200 people's scores. Very quickly, I'm just going to put this up for just a second because we are running out of time. For this right here, what we have is we have data that goes with goal 2. As I said, we're going to do the number of teacher or student service staff for goal 3, which we also have, and goal 1 we're still playing with. We're not sure exactly what we are going to be able to report on. So if anyone has any ideas, that would be great. We just don't collect family awareness of programs and then who participated in a county mental health agency program. We just don't have that. So it was a great goal. We are going to do something with it, but we're not sure exactly what it is. So I know I just went really quickly through those 2, but I'm almost out of time. But I'm going to quickly go through the last one and then see if you have any final questions. So building and sustaining our future. What you will not see in the scorecard is us calling out any of our buildings that are not secure. So we will not be doing that. For example, almost all of our buildings now have vegetables in the as you come into the school. We have a couple that do not because of various stages of renovation, et cetera. But we will not be reporting on who those are because for obvious reasons. We don't want to call out when we don't have when one building or another might lack something that others do. So we're still working on that. There is some there is some national standards for school building maintenance that I didn't know existed until I started working on this work. And so we're going to look at that to see how well our facilities match those pieces. Goal 2, I mentioned before, we're collecting some technology information, but we also are figuring out how else to measure that goal. It's not necessarily something that we have data on right now. But goal 3 is going to be all about how we use blueprint funds. All the blueprint funds are tagged specifically for certain student groups, and so we're going to have to share out and identify how we use our funding. So that I just rushed through, but that leaves us about 4 minutes. If anybody has any other questions, but I'll be presenting to the school board at the end of November on our plan. And so if you have any brilliant ideas you want to throw out there, if you know about some data that we haven't run across yet, please let me know. And you might see that on November 18th in the presentation. So I'm going to quit sharing. And then if anyone has any questions for me.
There were a couple of more that came in. Are there any discussions on going back to 50-minute subject classes for the elementary level? All subjects getting the same weight, since studies show that students at that age don't retain much after 20 to 30 minutes.
Once again, that's a great question. That is totally outside my area of expertise. So if you wanted to send that to me, more than happy to send that on to our elementary director of elementary education.
Okay. How might the strategic plan roll out work and how might the strategic plan work? Bleh, I can't talk. How might the strategic plan rollout work in regard to the possibility of the 45-15 scheduling per the committee recommendation that recently released?
So the strategic plan would just be, capitalizing on any innovation that we're allowed to have. I don't think it would change the strategic plan at all. What some of those proposed models would do, however, is allow us to be more creative on those college and career pathways that I talked about for goal B that we still have to massage out. So I think it would allow for some more creativity and innovation, which would be really cool. But it wouldn't necessarily change our goals. Our goals will stay the same in the concept of the goal. We might reword things slightly.
Okay. Is there any discussion on making pre-K classes available to all students and not just those identified as the ones with the most need? It seems that making it more available would help with the goals you have outlined.
So under Blueprint, the law requires us to have a seat for any 4-year-old who meets what's called Tier 1 eligibility, which is based upon income. By fiscal year 26-ish, we anticipate the governor pushing that out a little bit because of the cost. But the law specifically says that we have we first have to accommodate our 4-year-olds who qualify financially, and then we can start opening up seats if we have them. That's another big thing. We have classroom space available in places that don't have large demands. For example, South County, we could open up to every pre-K student in Anne Arundel County, but I can't put them on a bus in Glen Burnie in the morning and send them down to Deal every day for pre-K. It's just not a realistic model. But that's a long way of saying that under Blueprint, we can have universal pre-K. We then have to charge families though. So any family that's income is above 300% of the federal poverty level, we would then, once we get everybody 300% and below, in a pre-K seat who wants one, we could open it up, but then we'd have to charge families based upon a fee scale that MSDE has identified.
Okay. We're at time, so we do have some additional questions. Shannon, would you be okay if I sent those to you and then and then we'll get them out to everyone via a document or something like that? Because I definitely want to honor their questions because they have some good questions there. But I know we need to move on to keep us on track here time-wise. So thank you, everybody, for those great questions in the chat. Dr. Pugh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate you spending some time. Good luck with the puppy. I hope it's nothing too serious.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. What we're going to do now is if you go back to the Nearpod, we are going to dive in a little bit more to the strategic plan and how it aligns with our work with instructional technology within the eCoach Champ program. I'm going to drop that link in the chat in case you have closed it, and I'm going to turn it over to Tracy, who's going to lead us through the next activities.
Thank you, Carrie. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if everybody can hear me okay? Just make it. Thank you, Darren. All right. So on your screen, if you were looking at the Nearpod that Carrie just shared, the graphic in the center are the 5 characteristics from the portrait of a graduate. So if you have your strategic plan printed in front of you, or if you have it up in another tab, you might want to pull that up so that you can see those different characteristics. So portrait of a graduate says that they will be future ready, effective collaborators, critical thinkers, curious learners, empathetic community members, and then of course there's a little bit of detailed information underneath of that. So what we're going to do in this activity, this is a Nearpod Collaborate. Hopefully many of you have done this before. Sorry, not a Collaborate, that's the next one. Sorry, this is a drag and drop activity. So on the left-hand side of our screen, we have the standards for students, the Maryland Digital Learning Standards. And in the interest of space, we did not write them all out because there would have been so much text and you wouldn't have been able to find anything. So all you'll find for those standards are things like 1A, 1B. But what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at the characteristics for that portrait of a graduate, and you're going to align them to the Maryland Digital Learning Standards for students. Now, once we've gotten into the activity, if you click on that blue flag over on the left-hand side that says instructions, you can actually minimize those instructions on your screen so that you have a little bit more space dedicated to the standards and the portrait of a graduate. One last thing I want to say before I open this up to let everybody start aligning those standards. They are all infinitely copied where they are there. So for example, if somebody were to look at standard 2A, that's digital citizen, it says students will be able to manage their digital identity, being aware of the permanence of their action in the digital world. And maybe somebody says, ooh, that's being an effective collaborator, and they drag 2A over and drop it into that purple bubble, effective collaborator. Maybe at that exact moment, somebody else is looking at 2A and thinking, oh, that's an empathetic community member. Don't worry, you can also get one of the little chips that says 2A and drag that one over to that community member. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time because you're going to have to be able to read the different Maryland Digital Learning Standards. And again, we're focused on the standards for students, not standards for educators. And then you're going to drag those standards over and place them in the bubble that you feel they most align to as we think about our role as eCoach champions. All right, I'm going to stop talking. If anybody has a clarifying question or anything, drop it in the chat, unmute, but take a minute, read the portrait of a graduate, read some of the Maryland Digital Learning Standards, and then when you're ready, jump in and start aligning those standards.
And Tracy, everyone has their own individual one. This isn't a shared, we're not in Lumio.
Thank you. Okay.
And if for those of you who need the standards, I did drop that down into the chat for you as well. I hate to interrupt. Is everyone still able to use the Nearpod? Because I've got a message that my screen that Nearpod has frozen on me. And I'm the one running. Oh, it just disappeared. Okay, never mind. We're good. All right. I didn't want to have to stop it and start again.
I'm not having a problem dragging things over, so it's working. Okay. It's working fine for me.
Okay, good. All right. Carol, did you have a question? I saw that pop up there for a moment. Jen, yours is frozen too. Okay.
Jen, maybe try refresh. If you get kicked out, the code is up on the top of Carrie's screen. We can also drop that in the chat if anybody needs.
Okay, Carol, no worries.
Carrie, how do you open the standards again? You're on mute.
Carrie, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm working on it. There we go. I dropped them in the chat. So there's a separate document with the PDF.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I know this activity involves a lot of reading, but we're going to go with 1 more minute so we have a little time to kind of debrief after this one and then go into our second activity and work group. All right, I've got 9:48 on my screen. That'll give us about 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up this one, 10 minutes to dive into the next one. Does anybody volunteer to share anything that jumped out to you, any alignment between the standards and the portrait of a graduate characteristics? Give us a thumbs up. I hate to be that person that just calls somebody. All right, I saw Lauren come up first. Lauren Gray Hawkins. Lauren, come on off of mute. Tell us, you don't have to read us everything that you did, but maybe pick something that jumped out to you that you aligned.
Hi, I thought that there was a lot of alignment between standard 2, the digital citizen, and being an empathetic community member. That just a lot of looking beyond just your own actions, but how your actions impact others.
Awesome, thank you. I think I saw Tony raise her hand too, that she was willing to share. Tony Hayslip.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
Well, now I put you on the spot, Tony. You got anything?
Well, just coming from the media specialist, perspective, this aligns so well with our standards as well. It really dovetails. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, great. Great that you're seeing that connection. That's awesome. Zara, how about you?
I just kept feeling like my A's and B's and C's and D's were like lining up. Like I was like, oh, A is kind of the intro. It's like being a curious learner. And then B is like, oh, that's the collaborating part or the critical thinker part. And then C goes to like critical thinker or empathetic, whatever. And then so I feel like they kept lining up.
Interesting. Almost like every time they wrote A, they had the same idea in mind. And every time they wrote standard B.
Or verbiage or words that they were using that were prompting me to put it in a certain spot.
Interesting. Nice. Thanks for sharing that. I love that Amanda Sheila wrote in the chat. It fits into all of them. And that is something that I'll tell you a lot of us in instructional technology have seen. Every time we read through things in the strategic plan, Carrie will tell you she's got little notes off in the margin where she's constantly writing down alignment to the Maryland digital learning standards for educators and for students. So we love that you guys are seeing that as well. Okay, so we're going to wrap up the first one. In the second activity, we're going to split up into breakout groups, but I'm going to set the stage quickly before we do that. So in the breakout groups, we are going to do collaborate. I know I said that in the first one and I was completely wrong. It was drag and drop. This is our collaborate boards. So every breakout group is going to have a different collaborate board. So you're going to have to, we're going to test your ability to navigate to your own slide here in the Nearpod lesson. So this first collaborate board is dedicated entirely to priority number 1. So if you've got your strategic plan up, make sure that you can see all 5 of the priorities. So one of the breakout groups is going to go to priority number 1, achieving academic excellence. Another one is going to go to priority 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. On each of these boards, you're going to find a column for goal A, B, and C. So if you look at the bottom of the Collaborate board where it says share your thoughts, you'll notice that you're going to choose whether your comment fits with goal A, B, or C. So for this one, we're opening it up a little bit. You can write about how the Maryland Digital Learning Standards help us fulfill those priorities, but you can also just think about your role as eCoach champion and supporting instructional technology use in your school. How are you helping to achieve the priorities in the strategic plan? So again, we're going to go into breakout groups. You're going to get put into group 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on your assigned priority. And then you're going to be aligning your role with instructional technology or the Maryland Digital Learning Standards to goals A, B, and C. So again, you're going to need to have the priorities up, and specifically the one that you will be assigned to. So right now we're on slide 16 in the Nearpod, and that is priority 1, achieving academic excellence. If you are put into breakout group 2, you're going to need to go to slide 17. If you're in group 3, you're going to go to slide 18. If you're in group 4, it's slide 19. And if you're in group 5, that is slide number 20. Okay. Does anybody have a
Tracy?
question? Yes.
We have just discovered on ourselves here as we went to go to our appropriate slide for the group that we are going to lead that we're being forced to add an answer to each of the boards before we can move on. So we may have to pivot a little bit here and just have discussions.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not
No,
allowing us to jump
we do all
without
this
responding.
beautiful
So
planning. We can't.
okay.
I'm sure it's
Well,
something in our settings, right?
we'll make it
Okay. Okay. So let's start. We'll have to do this as like a really quick discussion. Okay. So achieving academic excellence. Would anybody like to share ways in which your role as eCoach champion can help us achieve goal A, B, or C under achieving academic excellence? Leslie just jumps in and saves us. Yes, Leslie. Help us out.
Sure. You know, I think the simplest thing is that we are equipped to show teachers all those accessibility tools that can help students not give up on reading, because their rigor keeps increasing, but their confidence is not always increasing. And so when we show them how educational technology tools can help them decipher and decode and all that more easily, then hopefully they will grow in their reading levels.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leslie. Yeah, accessibility, that's going to be huge in helping our students achieve academic excellence. And then Sarah jumped in under goal A and added one of our accessibility tools, our read and write extension. Does anybody else want to speak to achieving academic excellence and how our role with instructional technology can help our students? I'm pausing for that thoughtful moment there. I saw a second one come in. Let's see.
I mean, it says part of the thing says participate in meaningful discussion, and that helps us, through educational tools, we're able to provide different methods of access to be able to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Shayla. Awesome.
And that's kind of one of my soapboxes that I get on often. If you've ever gone into some of my things where we need to use our technology to allow our students to respond in different ways. Not all students are good with written language, but they do actually comprehend. So utilizing our tools that allow for video recording or audio recording helps us to tease out, is the problem the student's comprehension, or is it their ability to put things in written language, and being able to focus in on that one.
Yeah, student choice. Lucy?
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of a cool note, because the whole literacy portion has, obviously we all know, has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the teachers are like, well, when are we allowed to use some of these technology times, just because it's so scripted and follow along, but my school has started to talk about using those flex days as a way to use get a chance to use some of this technology-based learning through the flex days of like recording a Nearpod or sharing the end of a unit project. So that could definitely lend into all of that, is using those flexible ability times, because I think literacy, we see that literacy curriculum right now and we're like, well, we have no time to use this. So finding those times to embed them.
Leveraging flex days. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
And
Carrie,
I was
let's jump to priority number 2. And
I'm just going to say one quick thing about the whole CKLA. Keep in mind too that those slides can go into things like Lumio and then allow for all student response and not just those individual students calling out. It's very easy to do. And if you want help with that, any of the elementary folks, let me know, because you can leverage then the technology to have, using still the same CKLA slide decks, same with Reveal, we can actually put those into some of those technology programs that we have that allow for more student interaction and discussion. All right, next one.
all right, so this Collaborate board is going to look identical to the first one, but we have moved on to priority number 2. So now we're focused on future readiness and transitional preparedness. Again, you're going to want to take a moment to kind of look at goals A, B, and C, and again, align them to either the Maryland Digital Learning Standards or just our role in supporting our teachers in their use of instructional technology. And we will share out the answers. I know a lot of things were placed on the first board that we didn't get a chance to share with everyone. Anybody have any immediate thoughts? Raise your hand, drop it in the chat, come off mute. All right, Lauren again. Yeah.
I feel like at my school, we've had conversations about how as students are in elementary school level, as students are working on being successful in these different academic markers, so much of that is just being able to use the computer and use technology. And so the more opportunities we can give students to engage with different types of technology, like physically using the trackpad, navigating documents, using the accessibility features on their own, like all of those help prepare students for their own future success, because they become more empowered and able to just really do take over their own learning and become more independent learners, sort of fighting against that dependent learning. And I think that that just really hits all those goals within becoming future ready.
Independent learners. All right, so we are almost at 10 o'clock. I see hands up for Hope and Leslie, so I'm going to give them the last comments, and then we're going to wrap this up. I know we only got to 2 of the priorities, but we're always so ambitious and we run out of time. So Hope, go ahead and tell us what you see in the second priority.
So with the second priority, I know that we have access to Pathful Connect, and I think that that would be a great tool to continue to have our students be able to do some, independent research with, careers and things they might be interested in, and just making sure that, that the students are aware of, where to find information about the different programs that we offer. Coming from Cat North, we sometimes have, people come up to us and say, we didn't know you existed. And so just making sure that the information is, being, delineated so that they do know that, that we exist and that other programs exist, that they can, meet the goals that they want for their lives.
Thank you, Hope. All right, Leslie, you get the last comment. Super quick. We're at 10 o'clock.
It wasn't a new comment. It was just to add on to what Ms. Gray Hawkins said. We have to also help students handle the standardized testing. And if they don't get in those skills, then when they have to drag and drop, when they have to match, when they have to sort and all those things, if we haven't been there helping them use those tools, that's going to be hard for them to succeed on those standardized tests.
Yeah. All right, excellent last comments there. All right, so we have 10 o'clock here. If you have your catalog open for today, make sure you go to that 1010 menu offering there, take a look at the sessions, click the Google Meet link, and we will see you all in the various 10 o'clock. Carrie's got one last thing she wants to say before we all jump.
I am dropping in the chat the form for the end of this session, so please make sure that you do that for attendance purposes. And I will also post the link to the Nearpod with self-paced so that everyone can continue to add to those boards. I'll drop it in the Brightspace community for those of you that are interested. No pressure, but if you want to add, feel free to continue that conversation. But yes, 1010, go get your second cup of coffee, run to the restrooms. And I've dropped the evaluation link in there. Darren just dropped the catalog with the links specifically to session 1. And we'll see you all in 10 minutes.